Hello, is this Lainey?
Yes. Well, Lainey Nipper.
Okay, and what program were you in? And that's the first question.
Okay. Hope Christian Home and Academy in Duck Hill, Mississippi.
And were you addressed by name or given a new name or assigned and addressed by a code or number?
I was addressed by name.
Was it your name?
It was, well, with a title because I was a staff member. It was Miss Lainey.
Okay, okay.
So I was addressed with a title, but it was my actual name. Yeah.
So did you work there as well as attend, or did you do both?
There is a blurry line there because I went when I was 16.
Okay.
But was always considered staff, if you want to put it that way. So.
Did you come out of a different program or something?
No, I went there under the auspices of working there as like a missionary project.
Oh, okay, okay.
So my parents were inclined for me to go and do that mission work.
That's crazy. Just because of what I know about Hope Christian Home and Academy, but
yeah.
I want to hear from you what your experience was. So how long were you there, and when did you leave?
Okay, that's 4 years, 2003 to 2007, and I left September 2007.
Wow. Was there a level system of privileges and consequences? And I put that in quotes, but it's basically, did they use restraint or solitary confinement or labor or physical, any kind of, whatever their privileges and consequences are? Or would
you mean
be.
Like punishment?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there, for sure. I would say staff members were on top of that food chain. Although I was under the control of another staff member, I escaped most of that. But there was definitely a system of demerits you could receive. Based on demerits would be, if you had low demerits, you got to be in the front of the line, which gave you the best food. As far as punishments, they called them licks. That would be paddling. And you could be put on silence and not be allowed to speak. Or
did they use a paddle, or did they use any kind of their hands or tools or instruments or what?
The only thing I remember being used, other than a hand used to restrain for paddling, or a hand used to pull a girl by her hair, all I ever saw used was the thing they used for licks, which was probably a good 18 by 4-inch board.
Wow.
So when I say paddle, that was it.
Okay, okay. Definitely something that left marks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's an elaborate system.
Did they deny you? I know you were staff, but some of the other whistleblower staff we've talked to from different programs said that they, too, were not allowed to speak to their families during certain times. Did that happen with you as well?
Yes. Which was very hard. When things were good, I had a once-weekly phone call as opposed to the once-monthly phone call that the girls got. But it was monitored, and our mail was all read.
Is that for all staff, or was that just for, like, minor staff, or everybody?
That was for all staff except Mr. and Ms. Prather and the highest level staff member that I worked under, Tammy. She was the one who did the censoring, so her mail was not censored.
Okay. What type of did they force? I'm going to ask you about did you witness them force any of the youth enrolled in the program to provide labor, and were you compensated properly for the labor you provided?
I received a stipend for the work that I did, which at the time felt like a lot of money. It was $400 a month.
Wow.
Which at the time felt like a lot, but now I know was not. And girls and staff all had to do a lot of work. As far as I know, the girls were never paid for any of the work that they did in the kitchens and in the house and spreading seed in the grass and mowing the lawn. He loved his grass. He loved it so much. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's hard.
I know. It's tough. I don't judge you at all because you were young. And even with the older, we had a woman who she was applying for a job at a wilderness program in Oregon, and she lived in Alaska, and she flew down they flew her down because they said, we love you, you're great, come on down. And they said it was all expenses paid and everything else. And when she got there, they put her in a room with a male applicant that she didn't know, which I thought was very bizarre. And the only food that they gave them wasn't really food. It was energy drinks. The only food they provided was energy drinks. They didn't provide any real nutritional food, even though they promised room and board for their applicants during this process, whatever they were doing.
Wow.
So it was really bizarre. So I feel for the staff, too, because I know that they, in a lot of these situations, are in really bad a situation as the kids are sometimes. So were you out of school? I mean, did you get any education while you were there, or did this mess up your education, and what education, if any, did you see provided for the youth there?
Okay. I was homeschooled and so was considered graduated and was promised that I would be able to work on college work while I was there through the mail, through a correspondence program. That did not happen. I had to get out and get an equivalency when I got out of the program. I went and I got an equivalency. I went back to college and I got my degree. But while I was there, they used an ACE program. That was the name of the curriculum for the girls. And the school is actually where I worked.
Oh, wow.
So, for a portion of the time I was there, I felt like I was at least, it felt like I was doing good.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I wanted to be doing. But anyway, they were put through a school program of sorts. Now, I would say there were gross deficits as far as grade level and everything like that. When they got out, I'm sure they were very behind.
Right. Did they provide at least 6 credit hours or whatever, 6 hours of schoolwork per day or classwork, like in classic instruction?
I don't know if you'd call it classic history. It was a 6-hour school day when you factor in, but it was booklets, these booklets that were supposed to be at the level that each girl was at, and they'd work through them.
Okay.
So, whether that would pass, I don't know.
But not any, proper accredited teachers or certified teachers or anything like that?
Oh, no. It was all the girls in one room working through these booklets, and I would go around and make sure they were working in their booklets. That was it.
So if they had any problems, there was no one really to help them that could, unless they knew the subject matter.
Right. We worked through it as we could, but there was no one there had a teaching degree or any degree of any kind.
That's all of my questions, but you can tell me, is there anything you want to add or anything I know there's probably a lot you'd like to say. Do you want to talk about the Prathers at all and what your impression of them was and anything like that?
Good. I was glad to find this, and I have done different things, blogs and all that sort of stuff, but to find the HEAL organization that's already doing this, it's been good for me, and it's been good for a couple of other girls that I've been in contact with that were there when I was there.
Good. Well, I'm so glad. We think our site's pretty important, but the parents who find our site and the survivors, of course, often get validated because they realize that what happened to them was not right, and that's such an important thing for people who've been abused or exploited in any way to understand that that's not normal and that's not okay. And for people of faith, that's not really Christian.
Really not. and even that, that is something I would comment on, that the forced adoption of the religions that the Prathers are, it is psychologically difficult. Right, you don't have a choice. You go to all these church services and chapel every day and memorizing all of this scripture, and if you don't say that you agree, you get punishment.
That's crazy.
That is a hard thing. That and the fact that if parents are thinking their kids are going to go there and get help, they're not.
Right.
No one there is a licensed psychologist or anything like that, and the counseling that they would receive from Brother Prather, it's not real counseling. It's do better, give your heart to the Lord, and your life will be better, and your problems will be solved. And if you were a real Christian, you wouldn't be here. Your parents wouldn't have sent you away.
Wow.
And it took me years of therapy after I got out to get through some of that.
I bet. That's really very wrong.
I agree, yeah. And mental illness is not the same as demon possession.
Exactly.
That's a pretty crazy thing to say, but that's something that I certainly heard.
That's wild. Oh, I've met people like that, too, who've been, I don't know, if you curse, you've got a demon in you, if you say, like, the F word or something, and it's just like, that's crazy.
It really is.
Like, that is not, I've seen The Exorcist, which is fiction, but I assume possession's more like that. I love horror movies. I watch a lot of horror movies. I don't watch the possession movies so much because they really kind of do creep me out big time, but I like other, like, ghost story movies and stuff like that, or like the Pirates of the Caribbean, which is Disney, which doesn't really count as horror, but Johnny Depp's in it.
That's right. Always a good thing.
Yes, always a good thing.
Can I ask you?
Or they are misinformed about what the schools are, which is a big part of it. Like I'm sure with.
So that was more our situation. Like it wasn't what we thought at all.
Yeah.
At all. Well, that's an amazing. I'm glad you made it through all of that.
Thank you.
And are doing what you're doing. Like if anyone ever changes their mind about sending their kids to one of these programs, that's what it's all about.
It is, and that's why we do it. And I'm always relieved when the parent emails or calls and says, we decided not to put them in a program because of your website or because of the conversation we had with someone in parent support. We have a great parent support team. So.
Really? I never even thought about that. How would you feel if your kid got home and, wow, that never even occurred to me. That's wonderful. I mean, I think it's good, and I do sometimes feel guilty for being a staff member and not doing more.
Well, it's a difficult situation because it's rural. I mean, Duck Hill, Mississippi, I've never heard of it. I have family in Mississippi, and I've heard of it because I've heard of the program, right? So I know that it's in my registry of like, yeah, I think I've heard of Duck Hill. I think a program was out there at one time, Yeah. But it's not. I'm like, I know Jackson, and I know some of the other major cities, and even minor cities, but, like, not Duck Hill.
The whole point of the location is to be far enough away that you can't run to anywhere.
Yeah.
Right, from there. They used to be on a street, a road. Now they're out on 40 acres. And
I was looking at the satellite view of the property, and I was like, there isn't even property here. I mean, where they have the exact location is like a fork in a road.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck is that? That's not a location.
No, and being rural and being in the South, whenever anyone did get away and get to someone's house, they were returned.
Oh.
By the local police. Yeah. The sheriff knew the Prathers, knew Mr. Prather, Jimmy, whatever, and would bring people back.
Wow.
Which
That's so soul crushing, because it's like you think maybe you're going to be saved and then you get returned back. I know I've known survivors who've escaped their facilities just to be returned, and I think that's got to be like one of the worst blows to your spirit that you can take.
I think it would be. I never tried. I agreed one time to help someone get away. We both got scared at the last minute of him and didn't do it because the consequences would be so great to both of us if we did.
Wow. Was there any other kind of abuses that went on that you witnessed besides the paddling? Was there any sleep deprivation? Like, did they not give the girls enough time to sleep? You're supposed to get, I looked this up recently. Teenagers need more sleep. They need like 9.25 hours sleep a night minimum or something, like between that and 9.5 hours. I might be wrong. I'm going to have to look up the exact thing, but I know it was more than 8 hours or 7 hours, which seems to be what a lot of these schedules run on. I've seen, we have late night prayer meetings or raps or whatever they want to call them that go to midnight, 1 a.m., and then the kids have to get up at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. to start their day, so they're getting like 4 hours or less of sleep per night, and often that's broken. I was just wondering if that happened at all, if the sleep was, if their physical needs weren't met. And
well, the average schedule allowed for 7 hours, but if you were on punishment, you'd be kept up standing on the wall. For as long as it took was the phrase, right?
Yeah.
I remember one of the girls being put out, they were, to break her, that was the idea. And she stood she had been up for 12 hours when I got there.
Wow.
And during school, of course, he went to work on his grass, and I said, sit down, let me get you something to eat. So, yeah, that kind of thing did happen, and when he got serious about punishing you, there were very, very creative punishments.
Do you know was that like the longest someone had to stand that you know of, or did they have longer?
I think 12 hours was the longest anyone ever made it. She was, famous for being the toughest one and taking the most punishment. But that's without a break.
Yeah.
That's the thing, other than just to go to the bathroom and to come back. And sometimes not even that. I have seen girls be made to stand on the wall and wet themselves because they weren't allowed to move from there.
Right. And that alone is also, that's a health hazard.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Of course. No one was ever taken to the doctor or anything. None of us were. And if you were on medication when you went, you were taken off of it immediately. Because I was.
Wow. That's dangerous, depending on the medication.
I know that now. At the time, what is it? I speak for God, and these doctors are from the devil, and without it, you can have faith and be healed. Yeah. It's, you've heard all these stories before, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy things that happen.
It's terrible. Do you want to share any of the other bizarre punishments? If it's too upsetting, we don't have to. I just thought, I think people should know exactly what goes on. One of the questions we get a lot is, what do you mean by abuse? And it's a frustrating question to be asked. I usually say I mean the legal definition of child abuse, which varies by state. There's also federal child abuse laws and child exploitation laws. What we mean, the legal definitions of such, and we consider, when you torture children or, deny them access to the bathroom or deny them food or deny them basic needs, including education and all that stuff, that all of that is abuse and illegal, because it is abuse and illegal. So that's what we mean by it. So it gets frustrating because sometimes we'll hear the programs, they lie all the time, so I don't worry about what they say as much. But parents, reiterate what the program claims.
Right.
And they say, oh, well, people like Healed, they think if you make a child make their own bed, that's abuse. And I'm like, bullshit.
No.
I have never said that. I have never said that doing, your own chores and taking care of yourself is abuse. I think that's absurd. And I have never met anyone who thought that. So I think it's a Looney Tune thing to say.
Oh, it is, but people can't picture it.
Yeah.
They can't picture it.
Right.
One of the worst things that you could do, and this is odd, okay, would be to be caught masturbating.
Oh.
That was one of the worst things you could. If you did that, then you were stripped naked and given a cold shower by Mrs. Prather.
Oh, wow.
Put back in your clothes and made to stand against a wall and hold out coffee cups full of water in both your arms and told when you dropped them, you would get paddled.
Wow.
Now, I never sat through that for longer than 15 minutes because when I saw it being done, I had to leave the room. And they always said the same thing about me, which is Miss Laney can't take it. Because even then, I couldn't take it. I couldn't watch.
Well, you're a human being with normal human feelings and emotions and a conscience.
That was discouraged. That diminished my work capacity, right? Because if anything serious needed to be done, they would say, well, she can't take it, because I would cry. I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
And I was always bad to let them off of the punishment they were supposed to be having. Because obviously, I knew it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I hated it when I had to leave for that reason. Because in some kind of twisted way, I thought, well, at least I'm helping a little. They get a little kindness, every day.
Right. I know it's so hard. There's so many staff who've had that experience, too, who've heart broke because they felt like they're the only ones with a conscience at a facility, and it's like, well, do I stay or do I go?
Right.
It's so hard. And I know Mississippi is, they don't have any mandated reporter protections that I know of. I went through and looked at the national mandated reporter protections because I was trying to figure out recently why more staff don't report what goes on beyond, just corruption. I'm like, what is going on? Why don't more people report this?
Yeah.
And I found out that in most of the states, like only the 15 states have laws that protect mandated reporters. The rest of them really don't protect mandated reporters. And in some states, including Maine of all places, there was a recent judgment against a whistleblower, a mandated reporter, who reported abuse at a facility for the disabled that they worked at, and they were terminated and sued, and they lost the suit even though they were doing what they were legally required to do, which was to report, because they were still mandated to report the abuse, but there was no protections, and it was permitted for their employer to sue them for reporting the abuse in violation of their non-disclosure agreements.
Wow.
And that's got to stop, and we need to make sure staff have the rights and the protections without fear of losing their jobs or being retaliated against in courts or what have you for telling the truth and for reporting what they're legally required to do. I mean, it's amazing to me that a court anywhere would, especially in Maine, any northern state, you wouldn't think that would be going on, but it does, and it's crazy.
That is.
And I'm sure it's worse in rural areas and places where there's a lot of, I don't know, let's get together and talk about this over Sunday dinner, and I'll hand you an envelope or whatever.
And the spiritual side of things doesn't help any either.
Yeah.
Because you're considered, one of the first things I did once I got home and discovered the Internet, which had become a thing while I was gone, was to find the Mississippi Department of Human Resources website and fill out one of those things you can fill out,
Yeah.
saying whatever you want to say, whatever's been going on. And I know they have been investigated a couple of different times and shut down once. You know,
yeah.
I consider that to be at least something positive, but it is. I have been anonymous until this interview out of what my therapist tells me is misplaced loyalty towards Mrs. Prather, because in spite of everything that went on, we had a relationship, and I don't know, it was hard for me to let go of that. It was hard for me to say, no, it was still wrong.
Right.
The fact that someone kicks you and then helps you up doesn't make it right that they kicked you.
Right.
And that's tough. That's really tough, but I feel good about it.
Good. Well, we're glad.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're speaking out, because I think it'll really help the survivors of IFB or faith-based programs like this, because I know that a lot of them are in pain.
Yeah.
And that it's good to be validated, and having you as a former staff, I know it's going to help validate some of them and help them hopefully heal, which is what we really want to see happen.
Right.
We came up with the acronym before we decided what the letters stood for, by the way. That's why I always say HEAL. It's like we're HEAL because we started with an acronym, and then we were like, okay, what should each letter stand for? We had a meeting about it.
I think that's great. I think that, well, because that's exactly what it does.
Thank you.
That's incredible. Yeah. Well, that's good, and thank you for being so nice. I was really nervous, but fortunately, for our purposes here, the Prathers think that the Internet is the devil.
Oh.
So, no worries about an anti-website there.
Oh, good. Well, no wonder I couldn't find much on them. Like, I couldn't find a website for the program or anything.
Oh.
Like, I found, like, other, like, ministry websites that linked, that gave their phone number for, like, out and what have you, but I couldn't find any that were, like, this is actually their website. I was like, darn it, they don't have anything like that.
Don't you know the World Wide Web is the web of the devil?
Oh.
Seriously. Like, I'm not making that up.
No.
The worst thing they could say about me would be that I attempted suicide while I was there and am mentally unstable, which is all true.
Right, but what's the reason for that? I'm like, really, subject people to such conditions, you don't expect them to not want to be here?
Right. Yeah, I can't do this. I can't live up to this. I'm done.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And well, that's what I was told. Like, that was the threat when I left, was if you ever tell anybody anything, I'm going to tell the world that you are mentally unstable and attempted suicide, and you wouldn't want anybody to know that.
Wow. Well, you know what? A lot of people attempt suicide. I mean, I'm not saying, like, oh, let's just all go do that, but I personally have an experience with it myself, And being in this line of work and in volunteerism that I do, I meet a lot of people who have attempted suicide, and I just don't see it. I'm like, you know what? I've listened to the arguments for euthanasia, for people, the right to die, the people who are like the right to decide when it's their time, if they're terminally ill or what have you, and the sufferings become too great. And I'm like, well, sometimes it's not physical suffering. Sometimes it's mental suffering. And if you don't see a way out, that it's a way out. And it may not be a way out. I mean, if you watch Constantine, which is another movie, it's like...
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a good choice, especially if you're Catholic.
Right, exactly. So it's like, no, maybe not so much. But
I mean, really. And, my whole... Since then, and that was years ago, my whole philosophy has been, no, if something happened to me and I can share it and maybe help someone, that's what I want to do, not have secrets and things I'm afraid of that somebody's going to tell.
Right. And that's how I feel about a lot of things. One of the things I wish people would do, not as a punishment, but as a consequence or a discipline or what have you, is if somebody locks their pet or their child in a hot car and then the child or pet dies, if that person isn't sent to jail but is required to do community service and give public talks about the safety and why it's important that you don't leave children and pets in hot cars, even for a few minutes. You know what I mean? Because there was a woman down south, I think in Alabama. She left her child in the car for a few minutes and they died. And she didn't know what the risks were or what have you, and she was horrified, but of course she went to jail for it. And I thought, well, this poor woman just lost her child. I don't think she intended to kill her child when she left the child in the car. She assumed she wouldn't be gone that long and that it would be fine. It was an ignorant mistake.
Yeah.
But if she educates herself and she can share her story and maybe reach people who will not do that.
Awareness. I agree.
Yeah, so I think that would be much better and a better way for the public, too, because it's like you're not going to – it's a real story now. It's not, well, don't leave your kid in the car because this could happen.
No, it's a woman saying my actual child actually died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I know that would be hard. It might be harder than jail. I don't know for some people, but
I can't imagine the guilt.
Yeah, but I'm like, well, if you were saving lives, though, maybe that would help recover any guilt feelings. I mean, you probably always feel guilty, but it would alleviate, I think, some of that suffering, some of that pain.
Yeah, I think it would. I mean, I think that this type of thing, like I'm doing tonight, is definitely cathartic to help alleviate some of the guilt that I still feel for having been there and witnessed that and not done more.
Well, you were so young, too. I don't want you to put so much pressure on yourself. I mean, if you were my age when you went to work there and in your 40s and you were like, oh, I just didn't know how to stand up, I'd be like, okay, were you, like, totally raised in, like, that cloistered Baptist environment or what? Where, like, you, like, never, like, knew that there was, you didn't have TV maybe? I don't know. Like, there's so many programs and shows and movies and everything about child abuse and spousal abuse and domestic violence and even institutional abuse. There's been a few movies about it, too. So I just think you have to, at some point, become aware that this is wrong and society agrees that it's wrong, right? Maybe not.
Right. You would think so. There is nothing like coming out of that dark cave.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, after years and seeing television. I remember that. Thank you so much, Angela. I appreciate it.
I'm happy. I'm happy to help.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But
Miss Fraser would always say that. Oh, Mississippi doesn't have any rules against anything, which is true. They pretty much don't. We did get the one foothold that I do remember. So I remember them always getting really upset over health department exams and regulations. They would always clean up the food and make sure there was good food in the house and there was no food on the floor and there were no mice and that sort of thing before the health department inspection. I don't know how fire codes even work for places where you're locked in.
Yeah.
I guess there's got to be protocol for that somewhere because, it happens, but no, definitely not. Like, that's, not being able to attend to one's appearance is very demoralizing.
Definitely.
Like, I always felt that way. Of course, being raised Baptist, I never had very many choices in that respect, but being dressed in uniform, I always felt was very demoralizing.
Yeah. Well, do they have uniforms at Hope Christian Home and Academy? Was it all the same, or were they really just like crappy clothes everyone had to wear?
On Sundays for church, it was crappy clothes everyone had to wear. But during the week, there were uniforms, polo shirts with long khaki jumpers down to the ankle, tennis shoes and matching socks, or hose and heels if you were a flight risk. Right.
Because you can't run in heels.
You can't run in heels.
I can't walk in heels. I have a problem with heels. I'm like, I think if you want to talk about things that were made by the devil.
About pantyhose and high-heeled shoes, right?
Yeah.
Right. I had no intention to keep you on the phone for an hour, but thank you.
No problem, no problem.